What is up, guys? Happy Halloween, and today we're going to be talking about makeup effects, and I'm going to go over how to do 4 different looks for cuts, abrasions, 4 different techniques. This video is going to be a little bit weird. Shot the whole thing last night, and when I put it into the editor, I realized there were a couple problems with the first half of the video, so I'm actually going to be reshooting half of it, and then it's going to cut to the footage that I shot last night. So if you're like, why does this look just a little bit different? That is why, but fear not, all the material is going to be here, so let's go ahead and dive in. So we're going to start with the simplest and move on to more and more complicated techniques. So our first method only requires 2 things: a paint color wheel and some thick, drippy blood. So to start off, I am going to take a little bit of black, mix it with a little bit of red on here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw myself just a little cut line right there, as we can see. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more red here. This does not have to be perfect, and depending what you're doing, like if this is just a super tiny little cut, nothing too crazy, and it's not going to be seen super close, or maybe it's an old wound, you could stop there. And if your actor is not going to be super close up in the frame like I am here, they're going to be a little bit more back, it's not going to be super prominent, then that may be absolutely fine. But if we want to spice it up just a little bit, we can add our blood. I like a little bit of a coagulated blood gel because it sticks right where it should, like so. If you're actually doing this on set, you could refine it just a little bit better. But this is just for quick sample. As we can see, ignore that little mistake right there, but otherwise got nice little zesty wound. This is great for like shallow cuts. This is great, again, if this is not going to be a super close-up and you don't want to take the time to get all the detail, prosthetics, liquid latex, all of that kind of stuff. You just need something quick, easy, takes 30 seconds to 2 minutes depending how detailed you want to make it, and you are good to go. Option number 2 is liquid latex. Obviously, test it, make sure your actor doesn't have any allergies to liquid latex, because liquid latex allergies are common. With that little disclaimer out of the way, I'm just using Mayron liquid latex. We are just going to dab on in here, and we're just going to go for making a little cut right here. Now, liquid latex, you do have to let dry in between your layers. That's going to be very important to success. And for this, we don't want to build it up too much because it'll get too thick and look a little unnatural. But basically, we're trying to create just a little bit of a raise, kind of the way that skin does, like if you slice it, say, like with a pocket knife or something, you'd get that little raise of skin and then all the blood and stuff. So we're basically trying to simulate that a little bit with this guy. All right, layer 1 is dry. That's fantastic. So we're gonna go ahead and do our second layer. One thing you want to be careful of when you're applying it is, as we can see, I got this a lot much thicker, kind of juicier line than this one. So just take a little more care maybe than I did to shape it the way that you actually want it shaped. And kind of try with this second layer, either with your finger or with a brush, to kind of, a little sticky, blend it just a little bit, so that you don't get super hard edges. I would recommend using a tool specifically for this, but since this is what I've got here, I'm just gonna make a little bit of, not sure if you can see that too well, a little indent here in the middle, so that we've got kind of a little cut. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and do one more layer because blending it out made it just a little bit too flat, and so we're not going to get a great, you know, that 3D texture. We're not going to get a great 3D texture like I want if I don't do a third layer. So I'm going to let this dry, do a little bit of a third layer right in the middle, and then let that half dry, cut it, and then we'll be able to get kind of that 3D pop to it. All right, so our second layer is dry, so I'm gonna add one more layer on here. Again, we want just the center here. Nothing too crazy. So we're going for something a little bit smaller here. You definitely can do a lot of crazier stuff with liquid latex. But here we're just aiming for a little gash. All right, so this is our final layer here. So we're gonna let it dry just a little bit here. And I've got one of these little tools here. They're great, they've got two ends. They've got kind of a more pointy end and a little bit of a more blunt end. They are fantastic tools for this kind of thing. All right, that's what I wanted. I wanted that little bit of cut in there. That's gonna be really good for adding a little bit of depth to it. And then we're actually gonna get into coloring it. And what I'm gonna be using for that, just because of my skin tones here, is got another little Ben Nye wheel here. This one's called the Conceal All wheel. Basically a bunch of light skin tones, so I can kind of mix that up and blend it. Now, I will say this does not have to be absolutely perfect because we're going to be adding other color, blood, all that kind of stuff, but we just want it to look a lot less, you know, pasty white. And just do your best with whatever colors you have to get it as close to your skin tone as possible. Again, does not have to be absolutely perfect. It won't be. Edges here are a little bit rougher than I normally like. Just kind of blend the color a little bit. All right. Again, obviously not perfect, doesn't look super realistic yet, but we will get there. Then we're going to take our little bruises and abrasions wheel, take our black here, put just a little bit of black, and then also take our red here, start to fill that in. You can also take your finger, get a little bit of red on your finger, just kind of tap around so that you get a little bit of that kind of angry skin feel. So we got that, you know, still not the happiest with how this one kind of blended, but that is okay. One thing you can do, which I think I'm going to go ahead and do, is try and get the brush with just a little bit of liquid latex on it. And kind of blend out. It's definitely easier to do on someone else than yourself. kind of blend out, smooth out the edges here just a little bit. This can take a little bit of finessing. And obviously we'll need to do some additional painting here, but this will definitely help just a little bit. All right, so now it is dry, so we're gonna go ahead and finish up our paint job here, getting kind of the skin tones how they should be. I kind of like to dab on the color just a little bit rather than do brush strokes. Comes out just a little bit better. And yeah, it's not perfect. You certainly could continue to finesse it, but we're definitely getting a little bit better of a blend here than it was before. Got my monitor just below the camera, so if you see me kind of looking down a little bit, that is why. What I also like to do is add just a little bit of this color a little further out on my skin so that it helps it all blend just a little bit better. All right, very nice. So, you know, that's not looking bad. That's pretty good. Again, not perfect, but that's not gonna look bad, you know, for your short film or your Halloween costume or something like that. But then, of course, we want to go into our thick coagulated blood here. In special effects, I like to say that blood covers a multitude of sins. Because if, you know, it doesn't look as perfect as you want, you know, you can add just a little bit of blood splatter and get things, you know, looking a lot better. You can cover some edges that maybe are not as perfect. If I was doing this for an actual short film, I'd definitely take a little bit more time, finesse it a little bit more, try and finesse the color a little bit more, but this should give you a general idea of what can be achieved. It's got, you know, a little bit more depth to it, whereas this one, and you can see this one as I've been working, it's gotten a little bit smeared. That's a different way you can do it. Our third way we're going to try is nose and scar wax. Now, I'm going to be completely upfront here. This is the way that I am the least competent about making these. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm going to grab just a little bit of our nose and scar wax here. Just go ahead, put it on my skin like so. We'll see if it's going to stick. A little bit of a pain to work with sometimes, especially on yourself. We're gonna do our best here to try and kind of blend it in, and this is another great use case for this tool here. So yeah, as we can see, this is a little tricky to work with because it is so sticky. We're basically trying to do that little gash in here, but dang, it is sticky. It's being a little tricky here, so we're gonna try our sharp end. So one advantage of scar wax over something like the liquid latex is it's a little bit closer to skin tone, and it does blend easier. So you can kind of get better edges. And if I was more experienced at this, I could certainly even get better results. This is definitely kind of the newest way I've been playing with doing cuts. Uh-oh, we just lost a big chunk of it. Let's see if we can kind of get that back. All right, so we're just gonna do, all right, so we are just gonna kind of go with this. We are gonna go ahead, fill in the inside of this guy. Go for some red here, for a little bit of black in the very center, make it look kind of thick and deep here. Get back to our red. I just use the same brush, kind of mix it up. You can use different brushes if you want. I'm not overly concerned about it since it's going to end up being a little covered with blood anyway. And then back to our skin colors here, which I probably should have done first, but it's not going to make a huge difference. Just main thing is make sure I don't get too much like of the red and black on the palette. That's going to be the biggest concern here. Just kind of blend it a little with my finger here. Again, this is not perfect. This could be better if I took a little bit more time, blended it, if I had, you know, a bigger like mirror than just my little just my little 5-inch monitor. But this will kind of give you guys an idea of how each of these mediums works. All right, so that's, you know, decent enough for this tutorial. Kind of falling apart. It's okay, it'll just look a little bit more gnarly. Had a little bit come off, just gonna stick that back on for fun. Because this one kind of went a little off the rails, we're just gonna like make it extra juicy, but hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of an idea of different ways you can do it. You've got the very simple one where you basically just paint on the line, add a little bit of blood to it. You've got your liquid latex one where you can kind of build it up just a little bit, and definitely you can get more advanced than this. It's just kind of like very, very simple cuts here. And then you've also got your scar wax one that for me didn't turn out quite how I wanted, but with a lot of practice, you definitely can do some amazing results. I do also want to show you guys prosthetics. This one that I have is incredibly cheap. I've used it a few times before, so this is not going to look the best, to be honest, but it'll give you kind of an idea of how to do it. There are much higher quality ones that you can get. There's a lot of different options there that I'll try and explore in future videos, but we'll just go ahead and take a little bit of spirit gum. The way I like to do it is put it on, actually like just, you know, put it on our actual little prosthetic here. And then we pick kind of where we want it. As I said, this is not going to look the absolute best just because it's a low quality Halloween prosthetic that has definitely seen its fair share of usage. I'm gonna go ahead, apply that. Once this has stuck, there are a few different options here. One, you can just kind of leave it as is. Obviously, it's not blending at all. Another option is you can use some liquid latex around it to help it blend, or you can, really cover it in thick blood. I think this time I'm going to give a little bit of liquid latex a try, see if we can get something that is looking half decent. It's been a good minute since I have done anything like this. If you've seen my short film, Blood in the Forest, this is basically the same method I used to create the bite wound on my actress. So we had a prosthetic, and we put a lot of liquid latex around it to kind of blend it in, and then we really juiced that guy up with some blood. So this is basically that method. This is not going to be necessarily look quite as good as perfect because I'm not taking the time to do that. I just kind of want you guys to get the idea of what's possible with the different mediums, how they look on camera, all of that kind of stuff for your short films, so that you have an idea of what is possible. Now, one thing I could have done to potentially make this a little easier on myself is I could have cut down the prosthetic quite a bit so that we were mostly having the actual wound and not a lot of extra skin, but I didn't do that. But that's definitely an option, to shrink down your prosthetic to just more of the actual wound and then just build that up with more liquid latex, but it'll be smaller and a little easier to work with. All right, so we are dry, and we still got, a little bit of edge here, but we're gonna go ahead and paint her up and see kind of what we are working with. Again, it's all about as much as we can, blending everything together. Even we're gonna paint on our prosthetic here, get it a little bit lighter. Except obviously for our juicy wound there. What we can do here is, again, try and, blend our edges just a little bit better. But because, of the color and whatnot, we're not gonna be absolutely perfect here, and that's okay. Because again, we're working with a very cheap prosthetic, not anything designed for movie quality. This was literally like a Halloween store, super cheap thing. So we're not going to expect it to be perfection, and that's fine. But this, again, will give you kind of an idea of what you can do, what you can achieve. Gonna do another quick painting. Again, this is not going to look, quote, real, because the prosthetic is low quality. And so there's just not a great way to blend it. Ideally, I would have some better paints to blend. It's just a little too shiny. There's a lot of things that are imperfect here, and that's okay. because again, this is just kind of to give you guys a sense of the idea behind this more than completely perfect execution. And so we're going to go ahead and try and add some blood here. As I've said, blood is really the saving grace of a lot of these types of low budget wounds. We're going to go ahead and try some a little bit thinner. It's still, you know, relatively thick, but a little bit thinner, a little bit runnier blood here, just to really kind of fill in, make it kind of gnarly. This has become less of a, you know, just like a little cut, and more of, I don't know, some kind of crazy, nasty gash thing. If like my edges kind of like this are just not blending, sometimes I will just, you know, put globs of blood on them so that kind of hides those edges. You can see a lot of that in Little Bloody Red, particularly like once she gets the big wolf claw marks, because the prosthetic did not come off how it should. It was a different kind of prosthetic and like really thin, and it just didn't quite work right and didn't quite blend right. So there was just, we just basically did this where there's a lot of blood, and that made a big difference here. All right, so I hope that although these were not perfect, these gave you kind of an idea of some different possibilities for creating wounds, you know, from the simplest to a little bit more complicated to a little bit more complicated to using little prosthetics, and this turned into a big gnarly mess over here. But hopefully that is incredibly helpful to you guys. Hopefully you learned a little bit something, what to do, maybe some things not to do. Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next video.